Hello, and welcome to Haunted Slumber. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, eerie stories that quietly lead you through the darkness and towards sleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable. Let your body settle into stillness and allow the sounds of the outside world to slowly fade away. Tonight, as the night grows quieter and your eyes begin to grow heavy, a haunting tale is waiting to unfold. So close your eyes, listen closely, and let yourself drift into haunted slumber. Story 1, Sistine was the love of my life. She was funny, bright, stubborn, loud when she wanted to be, soft when she thought no one was looking, and honest in a way that could cut straight through any nonsense. She had this way of calling out bullshit that would knock you flat, but somehow she could still make you laugh while doing it. She could crochet a scarf while watching TV without even looking down at her hands. She could quote whole scenes from The Office from memory, changing her voice for every character. She could fix a flat tire, change your oil, and call you an idiot for not knowing how to do those things yourself, all in the same breath. I loved every part of her. I loved the way she snort-laughed when something really got her. I loved the way she rested her head on my shoulder whenever we hugged for longer than a second. I loved the way she walked into a room in her favorite heels like she owned the place. I loved her in bootcut jeans, in old t-shirts, in my hoodies that were always too big on her, but somehow looked better on her than they ever looked on me. I loved the red yarn ring she wore on her finger. I loved how she acted like she did not care about little things, even though she cared more than anyone I had ever known. I miss her every single day. What happened was on the 4th of July, or maybe it was Memorial Day. I know that sounds strange, but grief ruins time. It turns dates into noise. I just remember the loud red, white, and blue wreath hanging on our front door, and I remember the emergency room being packed when I brought her in. There were too many people, too much noise, too many smells, too many lives colliding in one place while mine quietly broke apart. Sistine was 30, 2 weeks pregnant. She had endometriosis, so the pregnancy had already been high risk from the beginning. We knew that. The doctors knew that. We had been careful, or at least as careful as two scared people pretending to be calm could be. When she woke up that morning and said she did not feel right, I told her we needed to go to the hospital. She argued with me at first, because of course she did. Sistine would not do anything unless she felt like the idea had come from her first. That was part of who she was. If you told her to sit down, she would stand up just to prove you did not control her. If you told her to rest, she would suddenly find 6 things that needed to be cleaned, fixed, or organized. But when the pain got worse, even she stopped fighting me. She still refused to take an ambulance, so I helped her into my car and drove. "How are you feeling, babe?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm and failing. Sistine groaned and leaned back in the passenger seat. "Dee, for Christ's sake, I'm fine. Is the pain getting worse?" I asked, "On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you Dakota?" She said, cutting me off without even opening her eyes. "I love you, but if you keep talking, you will lose the ability to ever father a child again." I stopped talking. I looked back at the road and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. Every few seconds I glanced at her. She had one hand on her stomach and the other pressed against the door. Her jaw was tight, but she was trying to act like nothing was wrong. She always did that. She could be scared, angry, hurting, or seconds away from falling apart, and she would still act like everyone else was being dramatic. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the car seat in the back. It was already installed. I had spent most of a Saturday fighting with the straps, sweating and swearing in the driveway while she stood behind me, laughing and telling me I was losing to a chair. My hands had been stained with grease for days afterward from messing with the seat and the car. At the time, I had been proud of it. It made everything feel real. We were going to have a baby, a little person. Our little person. But as I drove to the hospital that day, I hoped we would not have to use that car seat yet. When we arrived, they put us in an exam room. They handed us paperwork. They told us someone would be with us shortly. Shortly became a long time. I stopped checking the clock after 2 hours. Outside the room, the emergency department sounded like a war zone disguised as a hospital. There were drunk people shouting. Someone was crying. Somewhere down the hall, a man kept yelling that he needed his fingers. There were nurses moving quickly, phones ringing, machines beeping, doors opening and closing, and voices talking over other voices. It was chaos, but inside our little room, Sistine and I were mostly quiet. Every so often, she would complain just to remind me she was still herself. She told me I was breathing too loudly. She said the hospital smell was making her nauseous. She said if she had known we were going to wait this long, she would have brought her crochet stuff. At one point, she looked at the paper blanket on the exam table and asked me if I thought they made it uncomfortable on purpose, so sick people would want to leave faster. Sometimes she only sighed. Sometimes she rolled her eyes. For someone who tried so hard to act calm, she was not very good at hiding how scared she was. Eventually, a team came in to examine her. They took her vitals. They asked questions. They moved around her in that fast, serious way medical people do when they do not want you to know they are worried. Sistine asked what had taken them so long, but her voice was thinner than before. She was twisting the red yarn ring around her finger, rubbing it between her thumb and the side of her hand. She had played with it so much over the last few weeks that it had started to fray. While the nurses and doctors checked her, she leaned back and looked past them at me. "D," she said, reaching out her hand. "Can you get me some water?" "Sure thing, babe." I stepped closer and took her hand. I squeezed it once. Her fingers squeezed mine back. Not hard, but enough. Then I let go and walked into the hallway. I wandered for a little while before finding a couple of vending machines near a corner. The hospital had that strange late-day light, even though I could not remember if it was afternoon or evening by then. Everything looked washed out. The walls were pale. The floor shone under fluorescent lights. I bought a bottle of water and bent down to get it from the compartment. That was when I heard the commotion. A code was called over the speaker. Then another voice shouted something I did not understand. There were wheels squeaking fast against the floor, the kind of sound a gurney makes when people are running with it. I heard a crash cart being pushed. I heard urgent voices. I turned around, and I saw Sistine being wheeled away. For 1 second, I did not move. My brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. She was on the bed. People were around her. They were moving fast. Too fast. Her face flashed between bodies for half a second, and then she was gone around the corner. Then I ran. My shoes slapped hard against the linoleum. The water bottle fell from my hand and rolled somewhere behind me. I shouted her name, or maybe I only tried to. I do not remember hearing my own voice. I just remember running after her until an orderly stepped in front of me and put both hands against my chest. "Sir," he said, "sir, you can't go back there. Where are you taking her?" I tried to look past him. "Where are you taking Sistine?" He spoke quickly, throwing medical words at me like they were supposed to make sense. Diesels, hemorrhaging, emergency, surgery, fetal distress. I did not understand most of it. I did not need to. All of it meant the same thing. The woman I loved and our child were in danger, and I could not do anything. They took me to a waiting room and sat me down in a corner between a screaming baby and a television playing some soap opera that nobody was watching. I felt like I had been placed there as punishment, like the world had put me in a chair and told me to stay. All I could do was close my eyes and lean my head back. Sistine and I had met a little over a year earlier. It was at a craft store. I was trying to find charcoal pencils and doing a terrible job of it. She saw me standing in the aisle, staring at the shelves like the answer might reveal itself if I looked confused enough. She asked if I needed help. I said yes. She found the pencils in about 5 seconds. Then she told me she would accept my number as payment. Within weeks, she had a toothbrush at my place and a set of crochet hooks in one of my drawers. I had half a sketchbook filled with drawings of her sitting on my couch, her asleep with her hair across her face, her laughing at something on TV, her hands holding yarn, her profile in the kitchen light. When she properly moved in, my whole apartment changed almost overnight. Before Sistine, my place looked like a man lived there because he had to live somewhere. After Sistine, it looked alive. There were granny squares everywhere. Bright paint and sip canvases leaned against walls. Half-empty bottles of Mod Podge and glitter glue appeared on shelves, tables, and windowsills. There were baskets of yarn beside the couch, little scissors on the coffee table, and unfinished crafts in places I did not think crafts could be. I complained about it then. I would give anything to live in that mess again. I told her I loved her about a month into our relationship. We were watching a rerun of Scrubs, and it happened during a commercial break. I had been thinking it for days, maybe weeks, and suddenly the words just came out. She did not cry. She did not gasp. She did not make it dramatic. She just smiled, shrugged, and said, I figured. While she said it, she was fidgeting with the tassel on the throw pillow beside her. That was how I knew it meant more to her than she wanted to show. Around our 6-month anniversary, she told me she was pregnant in the most Sistine way possible. We were eating dinner. I asked her to pass the salt. She passed it, looked down at her plate, and said she was pregnant right before asking if the potatoes had butter or margarine in them. I sat there for a second, thinking I had misheard her. She kept her eyes on her food, but her face had gone bright red. Her cuticles were raw from picking at them. She was trying so hard not to cry that it hurt to watch. Then she broke. Please don't run, she begged as I stood and came around the table. Please don't leave me. I hated that those were the first words fear put in her mouth. I went to the pile of yarn beside the couch and cut off a few inches of her favorite thread. It was a variegated red crochet thread, the kind that shifted through different shades as it moved. I took her hand and tied it around her finger. Call it an engagement ring, I said. She looked at it. Tears were still on her cheeks. I always knew you were cheap, she whispered. I love you, I said. I wrapped my arms around her, and she melted against my chest. Then she suddenly pulled back. Wait, she cut another piece of the same red yarn and tied it around my finger. "There," she said, "so no one goes getting any ideas." I held up my hand like I was admiring the ring, but I was really looking at her. "Perfect," I said. In the hospital waiting room, time became cruel. I counted ceiling tiles. I paced enough to leave a path in the carpet. I bummed cigarettes off strangers outside, even though I had been trying to quit because of the baby. I sat down, stood up, sat down again, checked my phone, checked the doors, checked the desk, checked nothing at all. Every time a nurse came into the waiting room, my heart jumped. Every time they called someone else's name, I wanted to scream. After the third hour, I could not take it anymore. I went to the front desk. "Excuse me," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Can you give me an update on my girlfriend? I still haven't heard anything." The nurse behind the desk was older, with tired eyes and a warm smile. She looked like she had spent decades calming down scared people. "Sure thing, honey," she said. "What's your girlfriend's name, sweetheart?" I told her Sistine's full name. She typed it into the computer. Then she tilted her head. "I'm sorry, my love," she said. "I don't see her in our system." For a second, I did not understand. "What does that mean?" I asked. "Is she out of surgery? Is she in recovery? Is she—" I could not say dead. The nurse shook her head slowly. "No, sweetheart. Her name is not in our system at all." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible," I said. She put her hand over mine. "I'll tell you what, baby. Have a seat. I'll call up to the surgical floor and see if she's there. Maybe she just got missed. It can happen." I went back to my seat, but I did not sit so much as fall into it. I watched her pick up the phone. I watched her talk to someone. I watched her smile fade. I watched her brow furrow. I watched her stumble slightly over her words, nod, and hang up. Then she made another call. Then another. Then another. Each call made the room feel farther away. Sistine was not in the operating room. She was not in recovery. She was not being prepped for surgery. She had not been moved to another floor. She was not in a delivery room. She was not in the morgue. She was just gone. People say things like that all the time. Gone, like it is a softer word, like it is kinder than dead. But this was different. Dead would have meant there was a body. Dead would have meant people remembered her coming in. Dead would have meant paperwork, doctors, grief, calls to family, something. This was not dead. This was erased. I stumbled out of the hospital waiting room, feeling like I had been shot in the stomach. My ears rang. The world had no edges. The hallway seemed too bright, then too dark, then too long. I do not remember getting to my car, but suddenly I was in the driver's seat with my head buried in my hands. I sat there until I could breathe without making a sound. When I finally lifted my head, something caught my eye. The air freshener. It was a little black pine tree dangling from the wiper switch. Black ice. Sistine hated black ice. She said it was a guy's scent and that it did not actually smell like anything. When I told her I did not care for the vanilla or cherry or peach ginger spritz ones she used, she said she would meet me in the middle. She bought me leather, bourbon, and fresh shave. They were still guy scents, she said, but at least they smelled like something. I had not used black ice in over a year. Actually, I had taken all air fresheners out of the car when they started making Sistine nauseous during pregnancy. But there it was, black ice. swinging gently like it had always been there. I told myself I must have left it in the car without noticing. Maybe I had put it back in when Sistine was not with me. Maybe I forgot. That sounded like something I could do. I was forgetful. I was stressed. I was trying to explain something small because the big thing was impossible. I started driving home. On the road, I checked my side mirror and saw a car riding too close behind me. People drive like maniacs where I live, and on any other day I might have cursed under my breath and kept going. Instead, I looked into the rearview mirror to get a look at the driver, but I did not see him. I saw my back seat, my empty back seat, no car seat. I slammed on the brakes so hard the car behind me almost hit me. The driver laid on his horn, long and angry, as I pulled over to the side of the road. I barely noticed. I climbed into the back seat and started searching like the car seat might be hiding under a fast food wrapper. It was empty. There were a few old wrappers, an ice scraper, some dust. Nothing else. The car seat was gone. That was impossible. I had installed it myself. I remembered the frustration. I remembered the grease on my hands. I remembered Sistine laughing at me from the driveway. I remembered standing back afterward and feeling proud and terrified at the same time. It could not just disappear. I got back into the driver's seat and drove home too fast. When I reached my apartment building, I ran. I took the stairs 2 at a time. By the time I reached our door, I was already looking for signs. Something, anything. The bright wreath should have been there on the front door, loud and patriotic and ridiculous. Sistine had bought it even though we barely decorated for anything. She said it was cheerfully obnoxious. The door was plain, no wreath. I opened it and stepped inside. Then I fell to the floor. The apartment was bare. Not empty exactly. My furniture was there. The couch was there. The table was there. The shelves were there. But every trace of Sistine was gone. The walls had no paint by numbers, no diamond art, no colorful canvases. The couch had only its gray cushions, no crocheted blankets, no half-finished projects, no yarn baskets. My sketchbooks were on the shelf, but when I opened them, the pages were blank. Every drawing of her was gone. I stumbled into the bedroom. There was no color, just my black comforter and navy blue sheets, the way it had been before her. The closet had no glitter, no lace, no heels, no hoodies stolen from my side and made hers, no clothes that smelled like her, no hair ties on the dresser, no little bottles of lotion, no red thread, nothing. The worst part was the nursery, or what had been the nursery. Sistine and I had spent weeks working on that room. We had rolled the walls with soft blue paint. She had dabbed white sponge clouds across the ceiling while standing on a step stool and telling me not to hover. We had spent hours researching cribs, changing tables, rocking chairs, baby monitors, mobiles, lamps, shelves, baskets, and rugs. We had argued like maniacs over where everything should go. I wanted the crib away from the window. She wanted the rocking chair near the window. I said the changing table should be closer to the door. She said I had no eye for space. We had fights that felt enormous at the time and sweet now in memory. Fights about furniture. Fights about paint. Fights about whether clouds on the ceiling were too much. Fights about whether a baby needed a tiny bookshelf before it could even hold its head up. Now the room was a home office again. A desk, a chair, a laptop, white walls, no crib, no blue paint, no clouds. No baby clothes folded in drawers. No little socks. No unopened diapers. No future. My legs almost gave out. I turned, pressed my back against the far wall, and slid down to the floor. I held my hand up and stared at the red yarn ring still tied around my finger. It was the only proof I had. Hot tears ran down my face. I had not cried like that since I was a kid. Maybe not even then. It was not neat crying. It was ugly and loud and broken. I cried until my throat hurt. I cried until my chest ached. I cried because Sistine was gone, and our baby was gone, and the world had changed around me like they had never existed. Since that day, I have been grieving every moment. I tried to call her family, but their contacts were gone from my phone. Her pictures were gone too. Every photo, every message, every stupid selfie, every video of her laughing at something only she thought was funny. Gone. Even the ultrasound picture I had framed on my desk at work was missing. When I asked people about her, they looked at me with confusion or pity. Some thought I was joking. Some thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I am. But I remember her. I remember everything. I remember the first time she fell asleep on my couch. I remember the way she hummed when she counted stitches. I remember the exact face she made when she tasted bad coffee. I remember how she said my name when she was annoyed with me, and how she said it when she loved me. I remember the way she looked at her stomach when she thought I was not watching. I remember her asking me not to run. I remember tying that red thread around her finger. I remember our baby. I remember the car seat, the nursery, the blue paint, the clouds, the arguments over where the crib should go. I remember putting my hand on her stomach and feeling movement, small and strange and impossible. I remember Sistine pretending she was not scared. I remember telling her we would be okay. I was wrong. I cannot have a funeral for them. There is no body to bury, no paperwork, no death certificate, no family gathered in black, no one else to mourn with me. There is only me and this memory of a life that the world says never happened. So this is the only funeral I can give them. This is my eulogy. Sistine was the love of my life. She was real. She was funny and stubborn and beautiful and sharp and kind. She made my apartment messy and colorful. She made my life bigger than it had ever been. She was going to be a mother. We were going to be a family. And then she was gone. I have not felt real joy since she left. I do not know if I ever will again. I would give anything to have the life we were supposed to have. A life with Sistine, our child, and all the messy, loud, ordinary things I used to think would always be there. I still wear the yarn ring. I do not plan on taking it off. Story 2. Hey, Chris here. I do not even know if this is working. God damn it. Whatever, I do not have time to make this sound good. Hey, Internet, if anyone can see this, I need help. I need someone to track my location. I am stuck out at sea. I am on a cruise ship, and I need help. Please, this is the last way I have left to communicate with anyone. I have tried calling rescue services. I have tried contacting the Coast Guard. I have tried calling family outside the ship, news stations, emergency lines, anyone I could think of. Every time the calls either fail, cut off, or the person on the other end acts like I am making a joke. No one is coming. No one cares. Can someone please just help me? I am stuck on a cruise ship with my family. We have been here for 5 months. 5 months. This was supposed to be a vacation. It was supposed to be a simple cruise, a month at most. something my parents had been planning for years. A chance for all of us to relax, spend time together, see new places, eat too much food, take pictures, and then go home. But we never went home. We are still here. And the worst part is that almost everyone else acts like that is normal now. I am not joking. I am not trying to write some scary story for attention. Everyone on this ship is going insane, except they do not act insane in the way you would expect. They are not screaming all the time. They are not breaking down in the halls anymore. That part happened earlier. Now they smile. They dance. They swim. They eat. They clap at the shows. They talk about tomorrow like tomorrow is just another happy day on the ship. There is something wrong with the ship. There is something wrong with the people. There is something wrong with me too, I think. Because sometimes I catch myself thinking maybe it is not so bad. Sometimes I almost forget why I am scared. Sometimes I look out at the sea and I feel this pull inside me, like the water is waiting for me to stop fighting. Damn it, I need someone to track me. Somehow, I do not know how. Use my post, my signal, whatever you can. I'm in the middle of the ocean. We are heading toward, where were we going? I do not remember. What the hell? I should remember. It was the whole point of the trip. My mom was excited about it for months. My dad printed the schedule and kept it in a folder. My little sister would not stop talking about the beaches and the shops and whatever stupid dolphin thing she wanted to see. I knew the name. I said it 100 times. Now it is gone. This boat is doing something to us. I do not know how that is possible, but I do not even know why I am still surprised. Nothing here makes sense anymore. Nothing has made sense since the moment we stepped on board. The first strange thing happened during boarding. There was a man standing near the entrance, punching tickets. I mean that literally, like old school ticket punching. He had one of those metal tools in his hand, the kind you would expect to see on an old train or at some ancient theater. Everyone handed him their tickets, and he punched them with a little click before waving them through. At the time, I thought it was weird, but not terrifying. Cruises do weird little themed things. Maybe it was for charm. Maybe it was part of the ship's style. Maybe they wanted people to feel like they were stepping back into some elegant old age of travel. When I gave him my ticket, he looked at me for longer than he looked at anyone else. Then he smiled. Not a big smile. Not friendly either. It was small and patient, like he already knew something I did not. Then instead of punching my ticket, he took my hand. Before I could pull away, he pressed the metal tool into my palm. There was a sharp prick. I looked down and saw a tiny bead of blood forming on my skin. He just smiled again and moved me forward with his other hand, like nothing had happened. I should have said something. I should have shouted. I should have gone to security or turned around and left right there. But everyone was moving behind me. My family was ahead of me, and the man's hand on my shoulder felt strangely heavy. I just kept walking. I know that might not sound like enough to explain what is happening now. I get that. One strange guy at boarding does not mean the whole ship is cursed or trapped outside reality or whatever the hell this is. So let me explain some of the other things I have been living with. It was not always crazy. At the beginning, everything looked normal. People were having fun. Families took photos on the deck. Kids ran around with ice cream. Couples sat by the pool. Old people drank cocktails in the sun. There were dinners every night. Music, shows, games, shopping, smiling staff, all of it. It felt like a regular cruise, maybe a little old-fashioned, but not scary. My family loved it. My dad spent most mornings drinking coffee and talking to strangers like he had known them for years. My mom took pictures of everything. My younger sister wanted to explore every deck and every hallway. I did not mind it at first. I was not as excited as they were, but I tried to enjoy myself. The problem started after the first month. This cruise was supposed to last 1 month. That was the plan. 1 month at sea, several stops, then we would arrive at our final destination, the place I cannot remember anymore. On the day we were supposed to arrive, there was an announcement over the intercom. The captain's voice came through the speakers, calm and deep and strangely pleasant. He said our arrival had been delayed. That was all. No proper explanation. No new date. No emergency. No storm. No engine trouble. Just a delay. People were annoyed but not panicked. Delays happen. Ships get held up. Weather changes. Ports close. Whatever, we waited. Then we waited another day. Then another. Then a week. Then another week. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. At first, people were furious. I remember the shouting. I remember people storming the information desk, demanding to see the captain. I remember a group of men trying to force their way into a staff-only area. I remember people calling emergency services, calling lawyers, calling news stations, calling relatives back home and crying into their phones. People trashed parts of the lounge. Someone smashed a glass panel near the elevator. A woman stood by the pool and screamed that her insulin would run out. For a while, it felt like we might actually take control of the ship. Then one day, it just stopped. Not slowly, not after answers, not after someone explained what was happening. It just stopped. People accepted it. The anger disappeared like someone had turned off a switch inside them. They went back to the pool, back to the dining room, back to the shows, back to smiling at the staff. They talked about the delay like it was a small inconvenience. Now they are happy. They are enjoying their little cruise. I am not. I have tried talking to people. It never helps. It only makes me feel more alone. One day I sat beside a man near the bar and asked him if he understood how long we had been here. He laughed and said, "This is not so bad." Yes, it is. We are trapped at sea. The next day I confronted a woman near the elevators. I asked her if she remembered where we were supposed to go. She stared at me for a moment and then shrugged. "It is what it is," she said. How can anyone say that? How can anyone live like this? How can they stand under a sky with no land anywhere and say it is what it is? Something is wrong with their heads. And it is not just the people. The ship itself is wrong. Let me try to explain. There is a pool on the main deck. There are actually several pools, but the big one near the center was where everyone went in the beginning. A few months ago, I decided to swim. Do not judge me. I was stressed. I was angry. I had not slept properly. Everyone around me was acting normal, and for one stupid hour I wanted to pretend things were normal too. So I got in. The water was the saltiest thing I have ever tasted or felt in my life. It was not like normal pool water. It was not even like ocean water. It burned. It got into my eyes, my nose, my mouth, every small cut on my skin. When I climbed out, I was covered in dried salt. White streaks clung to my arms, my chest, my face. My hair felt stiff. My skin felt scraped raw. I looked around expecting other people to be upset. They were laughing. Children splashed in it. Old women floated on their backs. A man leaned over and scooped up some of the water in his hands. I swear to God, I think I saw him drink it. That was during the first few months. We do not go in the pool anymore. Something lives in it now. I do not know what it is. I have only seen pieces of it. A shape beneath the surface. A long shadow moving against the bottom when there should not be enough depth to hide anything that size. Sometimes the water rises in the middle, not like waves, but like something underneath is breathing. Once, I saw a child standing too close to the edge. His mother pulled him back before I could say anything. She did not look scared. She just smiled at the water and whispered, "Not yet." I stay away from the pool now. That is not the only impossible thing here. There is an entertainment crew on board. In the beginning, they performed once a week. It was an animal show. 2 men in bright jackets came out with 3 Labradors, or sometimes with large parrots. I do not know the exact kind of parrots, colorful ones, loud ones. The dogs jumped through hoops, the birds landed on shoulders, people clapped. It was simple and boring, but normal. Last month, the shows started changing. First, they brought out seals. I thought maybe the ship had an animal section I had not seen. Strange, but possible. Big cruise ships have storage areas. Maybe they had planned some larger performances. Then came donkeys. That made less sense, but people still laughed and clapped. Then the animals got bigger. Last week they had lions. Actual lions. There are no lions on this ship. I need you to understand that. I have walked everywhere passengers are allowed to go. I have looked through doors I was not supposed to open. There are no cages, no animal rooms, no space for lions, no smell of them, no handlers walking around with equipment, no place they could possibly be kept. But during the show, 2 lions walked out under the stage lights. There was no fence, no glass, no protection. People in the front row were maybe 5 feet away from them. The lions walked in circles, sat on command, opened their mouths and stared into the crowd while everyone cheered. After the show, the lions followed the 2 performers off stage and into a small closet where they keep cleaning tools and extra chairs. I checked later. The closet was normal. Mops, buckets, folded chairs, a vacuum cleaner, no lions, no hidden door. Nothing. It is like the animals only matter while people are watching them. Then they stop mattering. They are there, and then they are not there. Next week the show is supposed to have sharks. I do not know how. I do not want to know how. But everyone is excited. I tried talking to the staff about it. That was another mistake. There is something wrong with them too. They do not answer questions properly. They look at me, but it feels like they are looking through me. Sometimes they ignore me completely. Most of the time, they stare out to sea, always out to sea. Their eyes are always turned toward the water, like they are waiting for something out there to call their names. Sometimes I see them standing at the rails, leaning forward just a little too far. They look like they want to jump. Not like they are sad, like they are being invited. Each month, things get stranger. One day I was walking around the deck because there was nothing else to do. There was nothing around us. No land, no other ships, no birds, no clouds low enough to give the world shape, just water in every direction. I saw 5 people standing together near the rail. At first, I thought they were playing some deck game. Then I realized they had a massive fishing pole. I do not know if fishing from a cruise ship is normal. Maybe on some ships it is allowed, But this did not look normal. The pole was huge, and all 5 of them were holding it, laughing and whispering like children waiting for a surprise. The line pulled tight. They cheered. They started reeling it in. Something thrashed in the water below. At first, I thought it was a huge fish. Then the thing broke the surface. It was a man. They pulled a man out of the sea with the fishing pole. He flopped on the deck like a fish, gasping and twisting. Water poured from his clothes. His eyes were wide and empty. I ran toward them, but before I reached him, he stopped thrashing. He stood up. He looked at the people who had caught him. "Good day," he said. Then he wandered off into the ship. No one reacted like that was strange. I feel like I am losing my mind. There is something the upper staff do every day now. It started last month. Every day at exactly 5:55 p.m. They stop whatever they are doing and line up. Officers, managers, performers, dining staff, anyone with a higher rank. They stand straight, face the sea, and begin shouting together. All hail the king. All hail the professor. To Kempis, to Kempis, to Kempis. All hail the rebus. I have no idea what any of that means. They chant it like soldiers. The words echo across the decks, through the dining halls, even from hidden speakers in the corridors. Sometimes passengers stop to listen, smiling softly as if hearing a song from childhood. Sometimes they join in under their breath. I do not like it. Then there is the captain. Oh boy, he is just called the captain. No name, no title beyond that. If you ask a staff member what his name is, they look offended. If you ask another passenger, they laugh like you have made a joke. He is the captain. That is it. That is what you call him. The last person I heard call him anything else was a man from Boston. He was drunk and angry and kept shouting, "Where is your captain?" What is that bastard's name? A vent above him opened. Something pulled him upward. I do not know how to explain it. The air seemed to grab him. His body lifted off the floor, and he was sucked into the air vent feet first. He screamed until his head hit the metal opening. Then there was a crack, and the screaming stopped. The vent closed by itself. Everyone went quiet for a moment. Then the music started again. Nobody has asked the captain's name since. The captain himself is hard to look at, not because he is ugly or scary in an obvious way. I honestly cannot remember what he looks like. I know I have seen him. I know he has walked past me. I know he stood on the upper deck during the 3rd month and waved at everyone. But when I try to picture his face, my mind slips. It is like trying to hold water in my hands. A hat, maybe. A coat. A smile. Eyes that were not where I expected them to be. Then nothing. There is something wrong with my family, too. That hurts more than everything else. My dad, my mom, my younger sister. They just accept things now. They eat. They talk. They have fun. They play cards with strangers. My sister goes to the show. My mother takes photos, even though I do not think her phone connects to anything anymore. My dad keeps saying this is the best trip we have ever taken. They live here now. They are part of it. I have tried reasoning with them. I have begged them to remember home. I have asked them our address, our neighbor's name, my sister's school, the place we were supposed to visit. Sometimes they answer. Sometimes they stare at me like the questions are rude. When I push too hard, they get angry. They tell me I am ruining the trip. My sister said that yesterday. She looked right at me and said, "Chris, why do you always have to ruin the trip? I wanted to shake her. I wanted to scream that this is not a trip anymore. But she just smiled and went back to eating her ice cream. What else can I do? The food is strange too. At dinner, there are always people standing around the tables, not staff. Passengers, they stand there without moving, watching the food, watching the people eating, watching the plates being filled again and again. Their faces are hard to describe. Sometimes they look afraid. Sometimes they look hungry. Sometimes they look like they are in pain, but also like they want the pain to continue. I watch them and my thoughts get strange. Their minds, their faces, all full of fear and lust and pain. Pain to lust, lust to hunger, hunger to the last table, and the last table to the east. Under the water, from sea to gray, all for the king. Pain to lust, lust to brain, brain to stone, stone to earth, earth to sky, sky to mouth, mouth to eat, eat and 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 eat. Sorry, I do not know what happened there. Where was I? The fish tastes strange. That is what I meant to say. It tastes like they put too much time in it. But there is always fish, always meat, always bread, always fruit, always wine, always water. We have not stopped for supplies in 4 months. There are no shortages. No one asks where the food comes from. No one asks where the water comes from. I tried to ask one of the servers once. She placed a plate in front of me and said, "The ship provides." Then she looked past me, toward the windows and the endless black sea. Even after all that, I might have been able to keep going. That sounds insane, I know. But when impossible things happen every day, they start to feel normal. You get used to being scared. You get used to avoiding certain decks, certain doors, certain times of day. You learn not to ask questions in front of the wrong people. You learn to smile when your family smiles, because fighting all the time makes you tired. But last week, something happened that broke whatever was left inside me. We were having dinner in the big ballroom. Everyone eats there at least once a week. It is huge, with chandeliers and polished floors and windows that look out onto nothing but sea. There is always music playing. Always. Not modern music. Old classical music, soft and fancy, the kind you hear in movies when rich people are eating expensive food. I hate admitting this, but sometimes it is calming. That night, the ballroom was full. People were talking, laughing, eating, drinking. My family was at our table. My sister was telling some long story I could not follow. My mother was smiling at her like everything was perfect. A man at the next table started choking. At first it was a small cough. Then he stood up, grabbing at his throat. His chair fell over behind him. His face turned red, then purple. He hit his chest. He kicked at the table. Plates fell and broke. He was fighting for his life right there in front of everyone. No one helped. No one even stopped eating. I stood halfway out of my chair. I think I meant to help him. I should have helped him. I do not know why I did not. My legs felt heavy. My head felt full of cotton. The music kept playing. My mother gently touched my wrist and said, "Sit down, Chris." I sat down. The man fell to the floor. He thrashed for another minute. Then he died. His mouth was open. His eyes were wide. But there was a huge smile on his face. It looked like he was happy. Like dying in front of all of us had been his part in the entertainment. Then everyone started dancing. The music rose. People stood from their tables and moved around his body. Couples spun past him. Children laughed. Waiters stepped over him with trays. My sister clapped in time with the music. I have never felt so uncomfortable and afraid in my life. This place is wrong. I am not a strong person. I know that. Maybe someone else would have fought harder. Maybe someone else would have broken into the bridge or found some hidden radio or killed the captain. I do not know. I have tried calling emergency services more times than I can count. When I manage to get through, they ask me the name of the ship. When I tell them, they laugh. Then they say, enjoy the trip. Every time. I begged my family to help me. They told me I was being dramatic. My dad called me a Debbie Downer. My mother said I needed fresh air. My sister told me I should join the shark show next week because it might cheer me up. Yesterday, I jumped off the boat. I could not take it anymore. I waited until late, when the deck was almost empty. I climbed over the rail. The sea below was black. There was no moon, no stars, only the ship lights stretching across the water in long, broken lines. For a moment, I felt that pull again. The same pull I see in the staff. The water wanted me, so I let go. I remember falling. I remember the wind tearing at my face. I remember thinking maybe this was finally freedom. Then I did not hit water. I hit metal. Hard, the pain was unbelievable. It went through my whole body at once. I heard bones break. I tasted blood. I remember screaming, but the sound was cut short. I remember dying. Then this morning I woke up in my bed. My clothes were clean. My body was fine. No broken bones. No blood. No pain except a dull ache behind my eyes. My mother knocked on my door and told me breakfast was starting soon, like nothing had happened. I cannot escape. I cannot leave. I am trapped here. That is why I am begging anyone who sees this to track me down. Find the ship. Find me. Save me. Save us, if anyone here can still be saved. I have had enough of this nightmare. I think I am going to find the captain and demand answers. If I die, then I die. At least maybe that will be the end. Either way, I am leaving this place one way or another. Wish me luck. I am sorry I did not update sooner. I think it has been 5 days since I last posted here. Time is strange on the ship. Some days stretch forever, and some disappear before I notice they happened. But I did it. I confronted the captain. I found him near the front of the ship, standing alone where the wind was strongest. At least, I think it was him. My eyes kept sliding away from his face. One moment I thought he was tall. The next I thought he was short. One moment he had a beard. The next I was sure he had no mouth at all. His coat moved in the wind even when the wind stopped. I shouted at him. I demanded to know where we were. I asked why we could not leave. I asked what he had done to everyone. I asked what the ship was. He barely said anything. He barely even looked at me. He only turned his head and smiled in that strange, empty way. Then he said, "You are a good boy." That was all. I do not know why, but hearing that made me feel warm for a moment. Proud, almost like I had passed a test I did not know I was taking. Things are different now. I feel strange. Better, maybe, less angry. Maybe I was overreacting before. Maybe everyone else understood something I did not. Wait, the intercom is blaring. There is an announcement. The captain is speaking. I can hear him everywhere. From the ceiling, from the walls, from inside my teeth. I cannot believe this. He just announced we are staying one more year on the ship before we reach our destination. One more year. I do not understand. Why? Why is he doing this to us? He cannot do this. I cannot be here another year. I cannot wake up every day and see the same water and the same smiling faces and hear that music and smell that food and watch the staff stare at the sea. I thought I was a good boy. The captain said I was a good boy. Why would he punish me? No, that is wrong. I should not think that. I am lucky to be here. This ship is beautiful. The sea is beautiful. My family is happy. The passengers are happy. The food is endless. The music never stops. And the captain knows where we are going, even if I do not. Maybe I was sick before. Maybe that is why I was scared. Maybe the ship was helping me, and I kept fighting it. That was rude of me. That was ungrateful. I love this ship. I love the salt on my skin. I love the pool, even when something moves beneath the water. I love the shows, and I cannot wait to see the sharks. I love the ballroom where everyone dances when someone falls. I love the chant at 5:55. All hail the king. All hail the professor. To campus, to campus, to campus. All hail the rebus. I should go now. My family is waiting for dinner, and I do not want to ruin the trip again. I do not want to leave. I never wanted to leave. Enjoy the trip. Story 3. I had always wanted to own a home. When I was a kid, my family lived in a nice house. It was not a mansion or anything like that, but to me it felt perfect. I lived there with my mom, my dad, and my older brother. We had a yard with a swing and a sandbox. My dad had a big grill in the back, and on summer evenings he would cook hot dogs while my brother and I ran around until our shoes were full of grass stains. It was the kind of place that made childhood feel safe. Then the recession hit. My parents had to sell the house and we moved into an apartment. It was not terrible. We were not living on the street, and I know a lot of families had it worse. But as a kid, it felt like something had been taken from me. I went from having my own room to sharing one with my brother. I went from a yard to a small balcony. I went from hearing birds and lawnmowers in the morning to hearing the neighbors through the walls. I decided back then that one day I would live in a house like that again. Not my parents' house, of course, but something that belonged to me. A place with a yard. A place where I could put my own furniture, paint my own walls, and stand in the kitchen knowing I owned the floor beneath my feet. For a long time, life made that goal almost impossible. I tried to build a good career, but every time I gained some momentum, something ruined it. The housing crisis, the pandemic, layoffs, cutbacks, restructuring, and a long list of problems I had no control over. I would work hard, settle into a job, start saving money, and then something would happen. The company would shrink. A department would close. A manager would decide my position was no longer needed. It did not matter how well I did my work. I had to start over again and again. A few years ago, I finally got a remote job that paid well enough for me to take a chance. I found a cheap house in a small town called Hilltop. It was not big. It was not fancy. Hilltop was not exactly a dream location either. It was not a big city, and there was not much to do there. But if you want to become a homeowner and you are not rich, you have to make some compromises. So I bought the house. It was a one-story place that had been empty for years. It had 4 rooms, a large bathroom, and a kitchen that had been refurbished at some point. There was also a garage, though it was not connected to the main house. Out back, There was a storm cellar too. When I first arrived with all my furniture and boxes, my first thought was that I had made a terrible mistake. The floors were a mess. The bathroom had no hot water. My phone barely had reception. I could not get the Wi-Fi working. The garage doors were old and warped. The yard was overgrown. The whole place seemed to groan and creak whenever the wind blew, like it was complaining about being lived in again. But the sale was done. The house was mine. So I worked on it little by little. I replaced the garage doors. I put in new floors. I fixed the bathroom tiles and redid some of the plumbing. I hired a couple of guys to trim the yard, plant some bushes, and lay down stepping stones out front. Week by week, the place started to change. It stopped looking abandoned. It started looking like a home, and I was proud of it. I had my own yard, my own wallpaper, my own furniture, a kitchen table with 2 chairs, a vintage leather couch I had found online for a good price. It was not perfect, but it was mine. For a while, I was happy there. My routine was simple. I usually worked from around 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening, with a lunch break of about an hour and a half. Sometimes I had client calls later in the day, and when that happened, I could sleep in and start later the next morning. I did technical illustrations for guidebooks and also worked as a reviewing consultant. Basically, companies sent me documents and illustrations that had already gone through a dozen other people, and I was the person with the nice title who gave the final approval. It paid well. But it was the kind of job where one big mistake could make you look useless fast. By the time everything happened, I had lived in Hilltop for about a year and a half. It was summer, not long after the 4th of July. You could still see bits of red, white, and blue balloons tied to poles downtown. The weekend was getting close, but I was not going to enjoy it. Because of a scheduling error, I had suddenly been handed a huge amount of last-minute work. They had written the wrong date somewhere, and something I thought was due in August was actually due in a couple of days. That mistake nearly destroyed me. I had to pull a series of all-nighters. I lived on cheap frozen Chinese food and a big box of energy drinks. It was not something I normally did, but I was working 16 to 18 hours a day and barely looking away from my screen. I kept a pillow next to my workstation so I could take short naps when my body started shutting down. I usually liked reading on my tablet, but I forced myself to sit uncomfortably at my desk because I knew that if I got too comfortable, I would fall asleep. Every 6 hours, one of the guys from work called me for a status update. I had the default ringtone on my phone, and after a few days, that sound felt like it had been burned into my brain. By the 3rd day, I had slept maybe 4 hours the night before. I was just over halfway done with the project, and it looked like I might finish on time if I pushed myself hard enough. I got up to grab my 3rd energy drink of the day and splashed cold water on my face. My hands were shaking, but I was so focused on work that I barely noticed. If I had been paying attention, I would have looked out the window. I would have seen the man walking up my driveway. The sun was just starting to set when someone knocked on my front door. The sound startled me so badly, I almost choked on my drink. Nobody ever knocked on my door except delivery drivers. I did not have visitors. I did not know enough people in Hilltop yet. I looked out the kitchen window and saw a man standing on my porch. I had not installed a peephole yet, so I did not feel comfortable opening the door. I walked closer and called out, "Excuse me, who is it?" A man's voice answered, "Lars, I used to live here." I frowned. "All right, can I come in?" I looked around my house. It was not exactly a mess, but it was not ready for company either. I had work everywhere. I was exhausted. I was in no mood for some stranger to walk through my house because he used to live there. Sorry, I said. I'm a little busy right now. How about next weekend? I won't be long, he said quickly. Please, it's serious. You need help? Should I call someone? Look, I don't have much. Never mind. Then, I heard the lock click. A second later, the door swung open. The front door was one of the few things I had not replaced yet. Apparently, this man still had an old key. Lars stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind him. Then, he locked it. He looked like he was in his early 60s. He was tall and thin, with long white hair and a messy beard that badly needed a trim. The moment he entered, I backed toward the bathroom, already thinking about calling the police. He raised one hand to show me he was not holding a weapon. I need something from the bedroom, he said. It will take 5 seconds. 5 seconds and I'm gone. Please, I did not know what to say. I shouted at him. I pointed toward the door. I held up my phone like that meant anything, but I was not ready for a situation like this. I could have grabbed a knife from the kitchen, but was I really prepared to stab an old man? I did not know. So, I did not do it. Instead, I followed him. He hurried into the bedroom, then stopped when he saw the wardrobe I had installed against one wall. It was a big, heavy thing, nailed to the floor. He stared at it like it had ruined everything. No, he said. No. He threw open the wardrobe doors and crawled inside. Then he started hitting the back panel with the flat of his hand. Damn it, he shouted. A wardrobe. They never put in wardrobes. Why now? He climbed back out and turned to look at me. For a few seconds he seemed to be deciding what to say. Then he lowered his voice. I know this is weird, he said. I know. But do you have an axe or some kind of power tool? I'm not helping you destroy my wall. It's a matter of life and death. Then we need to call the police. It's not that simple. Before either of us could say anything else, there was another knock at the front door. Lars and I both froze. He looked at me with wide eyes, silently asking if I was expecting someone. I shook my head. The knock came again. I stepped back into the main hall. From outside, I could hear muffled voices. Sir, would you kindly open the door? A man called. It's an urgent matter, if you please. Lars looked at me and shook his head fast. His face had gone pale. I can hear y'all walking around in there. The voice outside continued. Don't make me wait now. What's this about? I asked through the door. You got our buddy in there, right? Long hair, looks like shit. I looked back at Lars. Yeah? Lars cursed under his breath and bolted for the back door. It opened into my nicely trimmed yard, and he sprinted toward the woods. Outside the front door, some of the voices moved away. I heard someone speak into a radio. A few seconds later, I heard a dog barking. It did not take them long to come around the back of the house. Through the window, I saw a German shepherd bring Lars down in the yard. 2 armed men rushed in and zip-tied his hands behind his back. I had never heard a scream like the one Lars made when the dog hit him. It was raw and painful, but it was only the beginning. My heart was pounding out of my chest. The energy drinks were not helping. The man at the front door spoke again. You don't open this door in 6 seconds. It's coming down. You want me to start counting? I'm not part of this, I said. I'm not part of any of this. Then you'll be fine, the man replied. We'll all be fine. Nothing but sunshine and rainbows. So I opened the door. There were 6 men standing outside, with the 2 in the backyard that made 8 men total, plus the German Shepherd. The 2 men at the front looked about Lars's age. They had short white hair, trimmed beards, and the calm, hard posture of men with military or law enforcement backgrounds. They wore black baseball caps, blue fatigues, and bulletproof vests. Each had an assault rifle resting against his stomach with his arms crossed over it. They had handcuffs, stun guns, pepper spray, and 2 sidearms each. 1 pistol on the hip and another across the chest. The man at the door gave me a broad smile as Lars was dragged back inside, kicking and shouting. "Thank you kindly," he said. "Name's Jerome. This here is Marcus. Mind if we come in?" I did not answer. I just stepped aside. Even if I somehow called for help, these men could kill me in seconds if I made the wrong move. They were not messing around. Jerome walked past me. Marcus stopped in front of me and held out his hand. "Phone," he said. "Please." I handed it over. He nodded and tucked it into his breast pocket. "I got one of these too," he said. "Sorry about the inconvenience." One by one, the armed men crowded into my house. They closed and locked the front door. Someone worked on bandaging Lars's leg where the dog had bitten him. There was a large patch of blood on the hallway carpet. I could smell it at first, but soon the smell was buried under sweat and gun oil. They needed to watch me, but they also needed to deal with Lars. They solved that by sitting me down in the living room. Since I had been calm enough and had not fought them, they did not handcuff me. But they did zip tie my feet together so I could not run. One of the younger men stood nearby with his full attention on me. They took one of my 2 kitchen chairs and strapped Lars to it. Jerome leaned back and pulled out a cigarette. Before lighting it, he glanced over at me. "You mind?" I wanted to say yes, but my throat tightened. All I managed was a cough. Jerome nodded and put the cigarette away. "Fair's fair," he said. "We're gonna have a chat with our buddy here, and then we'll be gone in no time. Sound good to you?" "Great," I said, nodding too fast. "Yeah, great. Fantastic." He clapped his hands together while the others tightened the straps around Lars. Then Jerome pulled up my second kitchen chair, turned it backward, and sat down with his arms resting over the back. He looked completely comfortable. Not a drop of sweat on him. They started with simple questions. Lars' full name, his date of birth, where he was born. Then they asked what year it was. Lars did not answer. They asked what day it was. He did not know. They asked who the president was. That was when things became more serious. Jerome did not like Lars' silence. "You know why we asked those questions?" Jerome said. "It's to measure cognition and function. And if I'm supposed to believe any garbage crawling out of your mouth, I need that cognition and function sharp, my friend. So I'll ask again, who's president?" "I haven't been keeping up," Lars said. "You don't know our commander-in-chief?" "I don't. You been living under a rock or something?" The men laughed. Some laughed too hard. Lars looked across the room and met my eyes for a moment. There was something in his face, like he was trying to tell me something without speaking. Maybe he was warning me not to get involved. Maybe he was begging me to listen. I could not tell. Jerome shook his head and patted the German Shepherd. The dog wagged its tail so hard it nearly knocked over a lamp. 26 years and counting," Jerome said. "We've had one hell of a time planning your welcome home party. And here you are, stepping out of the dark and back into the light. Like what's it called? Lazarus," Marcus said. Like Lazarus of Bethany. Like Lazarus of goddamn Bethany. Jerome slapped his knee with each word. Then he turned and pointed at me with his whole hand. You read your Bible, sir? I don't have one, I said. Jerome laughed. Don't get more American than that. True blue. An honest sinner. Then he looked back at Lars. Pay attention, Lazarus, you're gonna need a role model. Then Jerome closed his fist, leaned forward, and smashed Lars in the face. The blow was so hard it knocked the chair over. The dog started barking wildly, but the handler held it back. I jerked in my seat, but the zip ties around my feet stopped me from jumping up. The man watching me raised one hand, telling me without words to stay calm. They lifted Lars in the chair back upright. He gasped for air, wheezing through his broken nose. Blood ran down his face, and one eye was already starting to swell shut. Word association time, Jerome said. Car. What? Lars said. Jerome slapped him across the face. It was not as hard as the punch, but with a broken nose it clearly hurt. Lars flinched and shut his eyes. Jerome tried again. Car, loan, home, house, box. Lars hesitated. Jerome raised his hand and grinned, but he did not hit him. Instead, he turned to the others, like he had found something important. Box, Jerome repeated. Your turn, Lazzy boy. Distant, Lars said. Jerome's grin widened. Now you're lying. That's not how people do this. See, I used one-syllable words. It's in the nature of people to match that. So when you don't, I know you're thinking too hard. You're choosing your words. You're lying. Now, if you'd said gone, that'd be different. But you said distant. That's not what it is it? He leaned closer, brushing one hand near the stun gun on his belt. It's not distant at all, is it? The questions continued. A lot of them suggested Lars had been somewhere far away for a long time. They asked him the name of the port of entry. They asked him the name of his sponsor. Lars tried to answer, but his words were messy because of the blood in his mouth. Jerome could explode into violence without warning, and he did more than once. They had been there for about half an hour when the conversation became something I remember clearly. Someone had wiped Lars' nose with a paper towel. Two of the men were walking around the house, looking for something. I assumed they were searching for whatever Lars had wanted in the bedroom, but I was too afraid to say anything. You know what's funny? Jerome asked. I thought you'd stop aging by now. I thought you'd come back looking young. Doesn't work like that, Lars said. I can tell. You look like shit. Occupational hazard. Got jokes, Jerome said. Man's got jokes. You want to hear one of mine? Lars did not answer. He only looked down and shook his head. A gun sits down at a bar and asks the bartender who the pretty girl at table 1 is. Jerome began. The bartender says, I don't know. Then the gun asks who the handsome guy at table 2 is. The bartender says, I don't know. Then the gun asks who the cute old lady at table 3 is. Again, the bartender says, I don't know. Jerome removed his pistol from its holster and clicked off the safety. He kept talking while looking down at the gun. Then the bartender asks, why do you want to know? Why are you asking about these people? And you know what the gun says? He slowly raised the pistol and pressed it against Lars's forehead. I just want to bang, man. For a moment, I thought he was going to pull the trigger. It was not Jerome's face that convinced me. It was everyone else's. The men behind Lars moved back. One of them shielded his face as if he expected blood. Jerome showed nothing, but the others were waiting for it. Lars looked at me again. This time, I still did not know what he wanted. Maybe he was begging me to say something. Maybe he was begging me to stay quiet. I could not tell. But I did not want a man shot dead in my house. "The bedroom," I said. My mouth was so dry it hurt. Jerome lifted his head and pulled the gun back slightly. He was looking for something in the bedroom, I continued. In the wall, behind the wardrobe. He asked if I had an axe. Jerome looked at me. "No shit?" I shook my head. He put the gun away and stood. Then he patted Lars on the head like a dog. "Look at that," Jerome said. "Look, at that, Lazarus won't have to come back twice after all. He got his own Lord and Savior right there with zip-tied feet. Ain't that something?" Marcus pulled out a combat knife and hurried into the bedroom. A few seconds later, I heard pounding on the wall. I tried to meet Lars's eyes, but he would not look at me. That was when I started to think I had made the wrong choice. As the pounding continued in the bedroom, I picked up more pieces of the conversation. Lars had been gone for 26 years. These men had known him before. Lars mentioned names of old friends they had shared, some of whom were dead now. Jerome did not seem surprised by any of it. There was also the question of where Lars had been. They talked about him like he had been dead, but he had clearly been somewhere else. Jerome wanted information about that place, but they did not talk about it like a normal location. It sounded abstract, but real. When they asked how far he had delved, Lars did not answer in feet or meters. He answered in levels. He had been down 12 levels, whatever that meant. When they asked if he had seen other people there, Lars said yes. There was a city. There were businesses, infrastructure, strange inventions based on plants and animals that did not exist here. They got those blue sunflowers all the way down in Adventureland? Jerome asked. Yeah, Lars said. Sure they do. They kill people over there? Lars hesitated, then nodded. Jerome smiled. You ever see one come back? Lars nodded again. They asked questions about the sun, how big it was, and how many hours were in a day there. They kept bringing up 1 year. 2030, that year seemed important. It confirmed something Jerome had been thinking. Some of the men in the room looked genuinely disturbed. One of them had to sit down, wipe his eyes, and blow his nose. Then the pounding in the bedroom stopped. I heard wood break. Then I heard something plastic being dragged out. Marcus returned carrying a small box wrapped in several plastic shopping bags and sealed with duct tape. It's not gonna help, Lars said. You have to stop this. It won't help. You're a goddamn devil and don't even know it, Jerome snapped. Been spitting so much poison my ears are gonna turn green. Get the bag open. Marcus slammed the box on my kitchen table and started cutting it open with his knife. Jerome pointed at me. Secure him. We have to find out how much he knows. The man who had cried earlier stepped forward and zip-tied my hands. He muttered a quiet apology while doing it and made sure the ties were not too tight. Then he patted my shoulder and stepped back, holding his rifle again. Marcus finished unwrapping the package. Inside was a completely black cube, about 10 inches on each side. It had no visible holes, seams, ports, or markings that I could see. Marcus lifted it above the table and dropped it. It made no sound when it landed. He picked it up and dropped it again. Still nothing. Everyone watched in silence. I had never seen anything like it. It fell slowly, almost like it weighed nothing. and when it touched the table, there was no noise at all. "Holy shit," Jerome muttered. "You actually kept the damn thing. But I guess you gotta leave a door open when you walk away, huh?" "You don't know what you're doing," Lars said. "I know I'm not dumping it in a river and hoping God sorts it out for me," Jerome said. "How about that?" His voice rose with every word. The German shepherd started barking again, matching his energy. The handler struggled to hold it back as it bared its teeth and pulled against the leash. Only after Jerome sat back down did the dog calm. "You think I'm unfair?" Jerome asked Lars. "You think it's just me?" Lars said nothing. So Jerome turned to me. "Sir, I'm gonna need you to answer a hypothetical." He stood and picked up the cube. It looked so light in his hands. He spun it with a flick of his thumb. "Imagine you're in heaven," Jerome said. Angels, Cloud 9, movie stars giving lap dances on apple pie lane. You're living it up, thanking the good Lord for a life well spent. You with me? "Yeah," I said. "Now one day, someone walks up and whispers in your ear. He says, 'You know what? This ain't heaven. This is hell.' And one day, all these angels are gonna look your way and show their real teeth. And those teeth are gonna be soft, rotten, and black. It's gonna happen. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And then you'll be in a world of shit forever." I swallowed as he stepped closer and looked into my eyes. He bent down, wincing slightly as his knees cracked. "Now, would you want that man to tell you? Would you want to know what's coming? Or would you rather enjoy your life of blowjobs and Christmas mornings? For all you know, that day might never come. And if it does, wouldn't you want to spend every waking moment before then living what little life you have?" He waited for my answer. I opened my mouth, closed it, then nodded. "I'd want to be happy," I said. "If it was already too late, I'd want to be happy." "He'd want to be happy," Jerome said, nodding like I had just given the right answer. "That's a wise man right there. Happiness is a fleeting thing, and we have to treasure it, don't we?" I nodded again. Lars looked at the floor and said nothing. Then my phone rang. The sound came from Marcus's pocket. It was my default ringtone, the same one I had been hearing every 6 hours for days. I was late for my status update, and someone from work was probably calling to make sure I had not fallen asleep at my desk. Marcus pulled out the phone and answered it. Go for 2. Then his face changed. He looked down at the phone, and I saw realization hit him. The other men turned toward him, suddenly horrified. Marcus dropped the phone and stepped on it. For a few seconds, the house was silent except for Lars' rough breathing. "It had the same damn ringtone," Marcus said, pulling his own phone from another pocket. "It sounds the same. You answered the wrong phone?" Jerome shouted. He stood so fast he knocked over his chair. Then he pulled his pistol, aimed at my phone, and shot it 3 times. The sound was deafening inside the house. My ears rang and crackled. Jerome yelled something about doing it right. He looked ready to hit someone with the gun. While they argued, Lars looked at me. His eyes moved toward the side of the couch I was sitting on. It was an older leather couch. There were sewn-in buttons on the armrests, probably from the time when Lars had lived there. Looking closer, I noticed the buttons were held in place by sharp metal wire, sharp enough to cut through a zip tie. As the armed men argued, I pressed my wrists against the wire and worked carefully. My ears were still ringing, but I heard Jerome yelling about interference while another man did some kind of countdown. After a few twists, one side of the zip tie snapped. Nobody noticed. Finally, Jerome checked his own phone. Signals out, he spat. Time's up. Take this piece of shit outside. I don't want to dirty this man's floor. One of the men grabbed Lars's chair and dragged him toward the yard. I kept my hands together, pretending I was still tied. Marcus was being shoved and cursed at. It was clear he had made a serious mistake by answering an unsanctioned phone call. As Lars disappeared around the corner, he gave me one last look. This time, I understood. I was in danger. Jerome walked over to me and leaned down. "We'll deal with this and be out of your hair," he said. "But we have to check something on you too. It's protocol. And I know you've seen some things, but I feel like I can trust you. Once we're done, we're gonna let you go. You just have to work with us a little longer." "So, I'm safe?" I asked. "Yeah, you're safe. For sure? For sure. Really?" He looked into my eyes, narrowed his gaze, and smiled. Yes, really, maybe he did not realize I was using his own trick against him. Or maybe he did not care. It was the same word association logic he had used on Lars. If the trick worked, then Jerome was lying. Too many syllables. Jerome picked up the cube and went outside with the others. One man stayed behind to watch me, while another checked the bathroom. Got a tub. Someone called. That confirmed it. I was not safe. I do not know exactly how I knew, but I knew. For a brief moment, I was alone with the man watching me. He was looking out the back door, only keeping me in the corner of his eye. I could not fight him. I could not fight any of them. So I had to try something else. I waited until he looked back at me once more. Then, when he turned away again, I moved. I leaned back and opened the window behind me. It was quiet, because I had replaced it recently. Then I stood and moved forward slowly. There was a small storage space across the room. I had never filled it with anything, so I thought I might fit inside. Another gunshot rang out in the distance, and my whole body jerked. The man turned. I slipped into the storage space just in time. From his view, all he saw was an open window and an empty couch. He shouted to the others and rushed outside. I do not think he even knew the storage space existed. Inside, I snapped the zip ties around my ankles. I had no weapon, and I knew I could not hide there forever. If they searched the house properly, they would find me. But they seemed to be in a hurry. I had never fully explored that storage space before. At the bottom of the back wall, there was a small hatch. It had been painted over, but it was just a piece of plywood. From the layout of the house, I guessed it led into the guest bedroom. I pushed on it, and it popped out, tearing a piece of wallpaper on the other side. No one was in the guest bedroom. The men were outside, moving toward the front of the house. I had a chance. I could climb out the bedroom window into the backyard and run into the woods. I put the plywood back, locked the guest bedroom door, and climbed out. That was when I saw Lars. He was still tied to the chair, lying in the middle of my yard. He had been shot in the back just above the heart. There was so much blood. My socks touched the wet grass as I stepped forward. The evening air entered my lungs, cool and sharp. I kept my head low. No one else was nearby. When I reached Lars, I saw he was still breathing. Barely, I bent down next to him. He tightened one fist and looked at me. "Wait," he wheezed. "Wait. Here." He slapped the grass with his hands. Then, still looking me in the eye, he stopped breathing. I touched his shoulder, but there was no life left in him, only blood, spreading into the grass and soaking into my socks. I started to straighten up, thinking about the woods, when a low growl froze me in place. The German Shepherd rounded the corner of my house. If I had not stopped, I might have made it into the trees. But I did stop, and those few seconds were enough for the dog to catch my scent. The handler came around the corner next, whistling. Seconds later, men poured out of every door. Jerome came first, holding the black cube. "What are you doing out here?" he asked with a chuckle. "I thought I told you to cooperate." "You were going to shoot me," I said. "How can you possibly know that?" "You were, weren't you?" Jerome thought about it, tasting the answer before giving it. "I was," he said. "And I am." He raised his pistol and shrugged. "I was gonna let you go, but you've seen too much. I'm sorry, I mean that." Genuinely, for a moment, time slowed. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I tried to think of a way out, some secret third option I had missed. I looked at Jerome, Marcus, Lars, the dog, the cube, the woods, anything. The cube was so black that I could barely see its edges, but the gun was clear. Jerome pulled the trigger. At that exact moment, he slipped. Not much, just enough. The bullet grazed my ear instead of going through my head. My face felt like it was on fire. Hot liquid ran down the side of my neck. I looked at Jerome and saw the ground under him moving. Something had wrapped around his leg. A hand. A pale, thin hand. I did not wait to understand. I turned and ran. Gunfire exploded behind me, but even in my panic I noticed one thing. They were not shooting at me. Someone screamed, then another. As I reached the edge of the forest, I heard Lars's voice. It was dry and rough, but unmistakable. At the same time, it sounded different. Larger, like it was coming from more than one mouth. "I've been back so many times," he shouted. "So many times. So many times." I looked over my shoulder. My yard had become a massacre. People were coming out of the ground. Men in their 60s, all with long white hair and messy beards. Some were almost skeletal. Others looked like they had only just begun to rot. One was nearly 8 feet tall, with long, thin limbs that reached almost to the ground. Jerome backed away, holding the black cube up like a shield. Other men were dragged down and torn apart. Gunfire faded under cackling laughter and snapping joints. Lars' voice echoed from a dozen mouths. "I knew you'd be coming." One of them laughed. Not a surprise to me. Not a welcome home party. Home. Ground. Home. Ground. The words repeated again and again, screamed by identical voices. I stood there for only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Hands continued reaching out of the ground as the entire yard turned into mud and blood. Some of the armed men tried to run. The dog handler backed away, firing wildly. Someone out front started a car. Jerome was already gone. Marcus made it to the back door, but he did not get through it. The upper half of a decomposed body grabbed his leg and pulled him down hard enough that his pants slid halfway to his knees. Something in his leg snapped when he hit the ground. 2 figures leaned over him. One grabbed his arm, the other held him down. Marcus screamed as they bent him in directions a person should not bend. Others died faster. They were pulled apart like broken toys. Until that moment, I had wanted to run from the guns and the death. Now I wanted to run because I did not want to see anymore. I did not want those images burned into my mind forever. Before I finally turned away, I saw Lars's body still tied to the chair, still dead, still not breathing. but his eyes were moving, still watching me. I ran until I reached a road. I think I followed it for about 3 hours before I came across a car. The person who found me could have called the police and left, but they stopped to make sure I was okay. By then, I looked terrible. I had already been exhausted before everything happened, and after running through the woods with blood on my face and no shoes, I probably looked like I was having some kind of breakdown. Once the police got involved, things moved quickly. They did not ignore the part about several armed men with assault rifles. I was not there when they searched my house and yard, but from what I heard later, it did not go smoothly. They found bodies, several of them. Some were recent, but others were old. Too old for me to be a suspect. They had to dig up my entire yard. They confirmed more than a dozen bodies. I gave the best description I could of Jerome. They even made a sketch of him. I do not know how many of his people escaped. I do not know if they found Marcus or the dog handler or any of the others. I do not know what happened to the Black Cube. It has been a couple of years now, and I have moved. I could not stay in a house where bodies had been buried in the yard. I kept waking up because I imagined someone knocking on the door. Every creak in the floor made me think something was coming up from underneath. Every time the wind blew, I heard those voices again. Home, ground, home, ground. Now I live in a townhouse. It is smaller than the house, but it is new. Same town, lower price, and no complicated history buried under the grass. Looking back, I feel foolish for how much of myself I poured into that place. I thought owning a house would make me happy. I thought it would prove I had built the life I wanted. But a place is just a place. It holds people. It is not the purpose of life by itself. If I have to work myself half to death just to keep living somewhere, what is the point? Can you really call it living if you never get to enjoy yourself? Jerome was a strange and violent man. He was cruel, and I still do not fully understand what he believed or what he was trying to stop. But there was one thing he said that stayed with me. It is okay to choose joy. It is okay for me to accept that something terrible happened and still move forward. It is okay to change what I want. I do not need a house. I do not need the highest paying job. I do not need a life that looks like heaven from the outside. Because sometimes all it takes is one soft, rotten smile for heaven to show its real teeth. And then you find out it was something else the whole time, something different entirely. Story 4. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Tad's new video, Baby Oil, Bronzers, and Muscle Juice, will be up in a few days. And don't miss my other channel, Cryptad, where I talk about my awesome new altcoin and the broader market trends. Live rad, everybody. I gave the camera a wink. Not just any wink either. A confident wink. A wink with power behind it. A wink that said, yes, you are watching a man who knows where his life is going. Then I leaned forward and hit stop. My 5th video in my series about how to shred a shirt by flexing your latissimus dorsi was finally finished. It had taken me almost 3 hours to get the angle right, because the light had to hit my back at exactly the right moment. If the shadow under the shoulder blade was too soft, the whole thing looked weak. If the camera was too low, the lats did not spread like wings. If the camera was too high, it made my traps look smaller, and that was a crime against nature. But now, it was done. High Def Tad had done it again. I uploaded the video and leaned back in my chair. Above my desk was a mirror. because every good creator needs to study the product. And in my case, the product was me. I looked at myself, lifted both hands, and gave myself a pair of finger guns. Everything was coming up Tad. My self-improvement YouTube channel, Tad Maxing, was growing fast. Not world famous yet, but close enough that I could feel it. The comments were mostly from guys, and based on the usernames and profile pictures, my subscriber list was a total sausage party. But I did not let that bother me. The women would come eventually. They always did in the movies. First, you inspire the men. Then, the women notice the power. Then, the sponsorship deals appear. And then, you buy a pool with a waterfall shaped like a dragon. That was the plan. Tad had faith. My next video needed to be even bigger. I was thinking maybe a full breakdown of how to oil your body for maximum definition without looking like you fell into a fryer. Or maybe a review of protein powders based only on smell and label design. People loved honesty, and nobody was more honest than Tad. But before filming anything else, I needed to get my blood moving. A run would clear my head, tighten the pump, and let the world see what it was missing. I turned on Quiet Riot's greatest hits and started getting ready. First came the jorts, not jeans, not shorts. Jorts, a strong choice for a strong man. I zipped them up, but did not bother with the button. I like to keep the top open. It was all about the V. A smooth, sculpted V leading down into mystery was something the public deserved to see. Briefs were not an option with jorts either. Too much restriction. A man needed freedom, especially while running. I called my private area the Chief, because every great warrior needs a title, and the Chief liked a little wiggle room. I went into the bathroom and did a set of push-ups against the sink, mostly to wake up the upper chest and remind the mirror who was boss. Then came the oil. Muscle juice was already a good product for making the body shine, but by itself, it did not give the glow that a body like mine deserved. You had to be creative. You had to innovate. So, I had invented my own mix. I took muscle juice, cut it with baby oil, and added just a little avocado oil for luxury. I was thinking of calling the final product Trickles by Tad. It had a clean sound to it. Fancy, but still dangerous. The kind of product that said, "This man lifts, but he also knows about skincare." I rubbed the mixture across my arms, shoulders, chest, neck, and abs. Then I added more, because great art takes layers. I used no less than 20 ounces, maybe more. The bathroom floor became slightly dangerous, but that was the price of greatness. When I could see a faint reflection of the man in the mirror inside my own abs, I knew I was ready. Tad thought outside the box. I pulled a fresh Vin Diesel t-shirt over my head. It fit tight across my chest and arms, just the way it should. You have to let the oils bake under cotton for a while before filming. That is how you get the dramatic reveal when the shirt comes off. After that, I put on my wraparound Oakleys. Now it was time to roll. The Fresno sun felt amazing when I stepped outside. It was hot, dry, and bright. Like the whole sky was a spotlight made just for me. I liked running through the wealthy neighborhoods because it helped me visualize my future. Some people run to lose weight. Some people run for health. I run to manifest success while giving bored housewives a reason to look out their windows. The rich streets were clean and quiet, with huge houses, wide driveways, perfect lawns, and cars that looked like they cost more than my entire childhood. I imagined what my life would be like when I finally reached true influencer status. I would trade out the Doughboy pool and the Ford Fusion for one of those insane backyard pools with a lazy river. I would buy a Lambo, maybe in bright green or yellow, something that told the world I did not come here to whisper. I would have a home gym with glass walls, a podcast room, and a fridge full of meal prep containers labeled by mood. I could see it all. Tad had plans. I was about halfway through my run when I reached the nicest house at the end of the nicest street in the city. This place was not just big, it was rich. The kind of house that looked like it had secrets, servants, and a room nobody was allowed to enter. There was a moving van parked outside, but the strange thing was that only one person seemed to be moving furniture into the house. She was using a dolly by herself. That caught my attention. Then she caught the rest of it. She was a long, cool woman in a black dress with her hair pulled into a tight bun. She had that dark, serious look, the kind that said she might drink red wine, read old books, and know how to ruin a man's life in a way he would thank her for. Her blouse was full in a way that made my mind briefly leave my body and return wearing sunglasses. She was a little more goth than I normally went for. But Tad was not about discrimination. Tad was progressive. She was sweating from moving the furniture. The longer I looked at her, the more I started sweating too, and not just from the run. My dating life had been in a rough place for the past year, a real dark valley, a dry spell so long it should have had its own historical marker. But ruts did not last forever. Every champion has a comeback story, and I could feel mine beginning right there in front of that moving van. Tad was an optimist. I jogged over and offered to help her move everything inside. She looked at me like she did not know what to say. That was normal. A lot of people freeze when they first experience the full Tad effect in person. So I turned on the charm. "My name's Tad," I said, raising both arms a little, "and for the next few hours, you can put these guns to work however you see fit." I winked and ran my tongue quickly over my teeth. Smooth, clean, classic Tad. She looked me over. Her eyes moved from my sunglasses to my shirt, then lower, then back up again. She did not smile right away, but her mouth curved just enough to show interest. "I'm Belle," she said. "Well, don't worry, Belle," I said. "Your beast has arrived." Then I flexed my pecs, and Vin Diesel on my shirt did a little happy dance. It was one of my best moves. "This is a big house," I said. "Are you all by yourself here, sweetness?" "The sisters will be here soon," she said. I tried not to look too excited. "Sisters, jackpot, Tad, righteous," I said. She asked if I would like to stay for dinner after I finished helping her move everything. I told her that sounded legit. She looked me up and down again, taking in the entire buffet of macho energy standing in front of her. I could feel the interest. I could see the hunger. Oh, I was for real, baby. Just wait until the shirt came off. That was when the fireworks would start. She had me moving furniture into the front room while she went downstairs to paint the basement windows black. I did not understand why anyone would paint basement windows black, but I was not there to judge. Maybe it was a goth thing. Maybe she liked privacy. Maybe she was planning a dark little dinner party. People with big houses had strange tastes. She had weird music playing on repeat. She called it Bauhaus. It was gloomy and echoing, not exactly the kind of mood music I would choose for romance, but Tad could work with anything. Tad adapted. The furniture was heavy and old, dark wood, carved edges, thick legs, and a smell like dust, leather, and old churches. None of it looked modern. There was no entertainment center, no TV, not even a visible speaker setup. That worried me a little, because a home without a TV is either deeply classy or deeply wrong, and I had not decided which one this was. There were also a ton of old leather-bound books. Not normal books either. They looked worn, cracked, and serious. The kind of books nobody reads unless they want to summon something or prove they went to college in the 1800s. There were paintings too, most of them showing naked women dancing around fires in forests. They had perfect bodies, which I respected. But the whole thing still felt a little strange. The women in the paintings had wild eyes and long hair, and some of the fires looked like they were burning people-shaped things. Art could be intense. When Belle came back upstairs from the basement, she began hanging blackout curtains over all the windows. One by one, the daylight disappeared. The front room got darker and darker until I could barely see what I was carrying. I bumped my shin twice and almost dropped a chair that looked like it belonged to a vampire judge. Then she unpacked a bunch of giant silver candle holders and started lighting candles. The room filled with warm, flickering light. It looked like Halloween Town in there. Shadows moved across the walls. The paintings looked alive in the candlelight. The women in them seemed to twist and sway around their fires. I told myself it was just the light. Moving everything took about 2 hours. By the time I finished, my shirt was stuck to me. The oils were properly warmed, and my pump was still respectable. I had carried tables, chairs, boxes of books, rolled rugs, and one mirror so heavy it felt like it was made out of gilt. Belle watched me the whole time with that quiet look on her face. Finally, she called me down to the basement. The basement door opened into darkness. A thin line of light came from below. The air drifting up the stairs smelled like dust, paint, candles, and something metallic underneath it. I smiled. This was getting interesting. I walked down slowly, one hand on the railing. At the bottom, Belle stood in the middle of the room under the only light. The basement was wide and mostly dark, with the corners hidden in shadow. The windows she had painted black were barely visible along the walls. Then I noticed the coffins. There were 4 open coffins sitting in the shadows. For a second, I stopped. Then I smiled again. She was really committed to the whole dark fantasy thing. Coffins in the basement? Bold. Strange, yes, but bold. I had heard goth girls could be intense, and I was open-minded. Twilight had done a lot for the culture. Maybe she was into roleplay. Maybe she was an artist. Maybe this was just how rich, weird people decorated. Either way, it was time for her to jump on Team Tad. Belle raised one hand and motioned me closer. Her eyes were soft and focused, and she had the most adorable come-here look I had ever seen. I walked toward her with my shoulders back and my chest high. "Are you ready for dinner, Tad?" she asked. "So hungry," I said. "How hungry?" "I'm famished," I said. "What's on the menu?" She smiled. "Tad?" I grinned wider. "You bet he is. Let's quit the small talk." Then I flexed everything I had. My lats spread, my chest tightened, my shoulders rolled back, and the Vin Diesel shirt could not handle the pressure. The fabric tore with a beautiful ripping sound. It split across my torso and fell away in pieces, landing on the basement floor like a defeated flag. "Come on, baby," I said. "It's time to feel the noise." That was when the basement door closed behind me. The sound was soft, but it echoed. Click, I turned my head. From somewhere in the dark, I heard breathing. Not Belle's breathing. More than one person. slow, dry breaths coming from different corners of the basement. My smile faded. "Is there someone else here?" I asked. Belle looked almost pleased. "Only my masters," she said. That was when they stepped out of the dark. There were 4 women around me. At least, I think they were women. They were naked, but not in any way that was fun, exciting, or even human. Their skin hung from their bones like loose cloth. Their ribs showed clearly beneath pale gray flesh. Their arms were too long, and their fingers were twisted and sharp, ending in nails like black hooks. Their eyes glowed red in the candlelight, and when they opened their mouths, I saw rows of sharp, shining teeth. These were not goth girls. These were bloodsuckers, actual vampires, and not the hot movie kind either. These were basement crypt vampires. Ancient, hungry, nightmare-looking women who seemed like they had been sleeping in those coffins since before my grandpa was born. For one frozen second, all I could think was, why does stuff like this keep happening to me? Then another thought followed. If only there had been some kind of clue before I walked into the basement. The black windows, the coffins, the creepy books, the old paintings of naked forest witches, the blackout curtains, the weird music, the woman named Belle who lived alone in a giant house and invited a sweaty stranger to dinner after painting the basement windows black. In hindsight, Tad had missed a few signs. The vampires moved closer. There was no way out. One stood between me and the stairs. 2 came from the sides. Another crawled halfway out of her coffin with a smile that showed too many teeth. Belle stood behind them, still beautiful, still calm, but now her face looked colder. Her smile had changed. She was not looking at me like a date anymore. She was looking at me like a meal. Game over, Tad. Game over. But Tad did not go down easy. I reached into my back pocket and grabbed my phone. I had no plan beyond throwing something and creating chaos, which was still technically a plan. I yanked it out and hurled it as hard as I could at the vampire standing in front of me. I missed. The phone flew past her head and smashed into one of the basement windows. The black paint cracked. Glass shattered. A bright ray of sunlight shot into the room. Everything changed. The beam hit the floor first, then bounced upward. It struck my body, and because I was covered in 20 ounces of baby oil, muscle juice, and avocado shine, the light did not just stop on me. It reflected. Suddenly, the basement became brighter than any basement had a right to be. The ray of sunlight hit my chest, my shoulders, my arms, my abs, and every curve of my well-oiled body. It bounced across the room like I had become a human disco ball made of muscle and poor decisions. The light was so bright I had to put my Oakleys back on. I stood frozen, afraid to move, while my body turned into a blazing beacon of buffness. The sunlight scattered from me and filled every dark corner of the basement. It hit the coffins. It hit the walls. It hit the vampires. They screamed. The sound was horrible, eye sharp and furious. The first vampire burst into green flames, then the second, then the third. Their skin burned like dry paper soaked in gasoline. They clawed at themselves, shrieking and twisting as the sunlight reflected off my oiled body from every direction. One tried to crawl back into her coffin, but the light followed her. Another slammed against the wall, leaving burning marks behind. A third fell to the floor and rolled, but the flames only spread faster. The whole basement filled with smoke, fire, and the smell of something old and rotten burning. Belle screamed too. One of the flaming vampires stumbled backward and crashed into her. The flames spread over Belle's dress immediately. Her beautiful face twisted into something ugly and animal as she shrieked. For a second, her eyes flashed red like the others. So she was one of them too. Of course she was. The basement started to burn around me. The old books caught fire. The curtains near the small windows smoked and curled. The coffins crackled in the heat. I did not wait around to see what would happen next. Time to bail. I tore up the stairs with everything I had. My slides slapped against the steps. My torn shirt pieces hung from my shoulders. Smoke followed me up the stairwell. Behind me, the vampires screamed, and things crashed around in the basement. I hit the basement door with my shoulder, burst through, and ran across the front room. The candlelight had turned wild. Smoke rolled along the ceiling. The paintings on the walls seemed to glow orange as the house began to catch. I slammed out the front door and kept running until I reached the street. Then I stopped and looked back. The richest, creepiest house in Fresno had smoke leaking from the lower windows. A few seconds later, flames showed behind the glass. I had no idea what to do. I could not go to the police with this. What was I supposed to say? "Hello, officer. I was trying to impress a goth woman I met during my run. Then her vampire masters tried to eat me, but luckily my experimental body oil reflected sunlight and burned them alive." They would have me evaluated again, and I did not need that. So I walked home. By then, the sun was starting to set. Fire trucks passed me on the road, sirens loud, lights flashing red across the neighborhood. I kept my head down and adjusted my Oakleys. My shirt was mostly gone. My body still shone like a champion, but the mood had changed. For once, I did not feel like posing. I thought about Belle. I thought about the coffins. I thought about how close I'd come to being dinner for a bunch of ancient basement monsters. I thought about my dating life and the terrible pattern it seemed to be following. Why could I never meet nice girls? Maybe there was something wrong with me. Maybe 40 really was not the new 25. Maybe my whole system needed work. Maybe I was too confident. Maybe I ignored red flags because I believed every woman looking at me was seeing the same future I saw. Maybe a normal man would have noticed the black painted basement windows and the 4 open coffins and said, "No thanks, I need to hydrate." Maybe I should just give up on women. I stopped walking. No, I could not do that. Vin would not give up. A lesser man might have turned back from the path of love, fame, and full body shine. A lesser man might have thrown away the jorts, buttoned his pants, and taken up a quiet hobby like bird watching. But not Tad. Tad had survived vampires. Tad had invented a product with real protective potential. Tad had walked into darkness and come out glowing. Literally. So maybe today was not the day I found love. Maybe today was not the day I became a millionaire influencer. Maybe today was not the day the world finally understood the power of Tad Maxing. But someday, Tad would prevail. Not today, but someday, Tad would prevail.